Presented by STEM at Home, an initiative launched by the STEM Learning Ecosystem Community of Practice, STEM Talks is a podcast devoted to issues related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on learning. STEM ecosystems will continue to bring you lively and informative conversations with thought leaders, parents, students, and others all thinking about the pandemic and the need for STEM learning. Today's episode is a deeper dive into the state of Indiana's reopening discussions. STEM Learning Ecosystems Director Veronica Gonzales interviews Reginald McGregor, Manager of Engineering Employee Development at Rolls-Royce, founding member of the Indiana STEM ecosystem, and president of the Lawrence Township School Board.
Great. So, Reginald, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm wondering if you could please describe for us the landscape in Indiana. Can you tell us what's happening regarding conversations about reopening schools, businesses? What does the landscape look like in your state?
Veronica, thank you. So I'm here in Indiana. So right now, of course, there's a dilemma understanding. So how do we reopen the economy? And as we talk about opening the economy, what does that mean as far as opening up our schools? From the way it looks now, it looks like we are going to move forward to open up things. So there's a lot of conversation around. We are able to take full advantage of our e-learning virtual space now because our shelter in place. So just like we want to make sure students have materials to work on, we have parents at home, teachers are with those students. Once we open up the economy and parents are back at work, now we got to be thinking from a perspective of how do you make sure students are accountable to the work and students can get the work done if they are not back in school. So there's a lot of conversation around, as we talk about academics, there's also conversation around the safety and just the overall making sure students are safe at home. Yep. Our shelter in place from the governor expires May 1st, and as of now, there has not been an extension. So we do think we will be moving forward.
And when you say moving forward, does that mean that the state intends to, that the organizations that might be, for example, running summer camp operations or obviously businesses, places of work for parents, does that mean that you think that it will go back to normal fully, or has there been any conversation about, what partial reopening looks like, that sort of thing?
Yes. So like many other states, we're following the guidelines from our president as far as the different phases. And then, as you're probably aware of, so even with those guidelines, it's kind of left up to the different governors. You take in the state of Indiana, so our major area of population is Marion County, Central Indiana, but we have some rural areas who might not have been affected as much with COVID-19, who could probably could have opened up last week. So it looks like we're going to talk about opening up maybe by region or by county, and then within that also what businesses will actually open up. Of course, there's been conversation around your hair salon, barber shops. We've even had some conversation around some of the mall areas. Many of our manufacturing facilities are slowly bringing people back into their facilities. Of course, all our central areas like our banks, they'll maybe take on a different schedule. So it's a by region, and then also what are the safest and also the most impactful industries for business that need to open. There's a concern around, of course, the restaurant industry, the service industry, where we have a lot of working class people that really need to get back to work, and if we don't do something soon, a lot of those facilities might even close eternally.
Definitely understood. I know that, that conversation rings pretty true, I think, in a number of different places. So we're happy to talk to you about what it looks like on the ground in Indiana. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about some of the conversations that you have been hearing about reopening, maybe some of the concerns that have come up, and how you have sort of mitigated those conversations or challenges. What does that what are some of the concerns you've heard, and how are you addressing them?
So it's kind of funny because it's really, you got to think about the timetable. And let me look at it from, so I'm an industry person, but I sit on a school board, so I kind of get to look at it from both lenses. So from my industry lens, it's how do we get things, how do we phase it back in for this summer and hopefully be, full operational by fall. From an education standpoint, summertime itself is a time when most schools are out anyway. Right, that's when your summer programs kick in, your modified summer programs kick in, your modified summer feeding programs kick in. So until you take a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we were really focusing on what does this fall look like if we are back in school fully, or if there's a hybrid model, or if we back virtually. And now we kind of had to shift to say, so if we open up the economy as early as May, we've already made the decision that there'll be no school for the rest of the semester. So what are we putting in place to be ready to accommodate those needs of working people this summer? Most school districts across the state of Indiana, I'm sure in other states as well, have some type of summer programs or have had summer programs in the past. You take here in Indiana, we always take advantage of summertime to get our students caught up or ahead in their reading skills as well as their math skills. And then we have different STEM camps across the state as well. So now what does that look like? So what does that look like this summer? Because we think there will be a greater demand. And now you're talking about a virtual space. Just like most states, a lot of times our summer programs, we have summer counselors who are usually either college students or back home or high school students headed off to college. So now we don't really have that work pool. And just like it's been a struggle for some teachers to be able to offer some type of e-learning assignment, what does e-learning look like in summer camps? When the intent for summer camp is for kids to have fun and interact with each other and be able to kind of, put their hands on something and or be able to celebrate as they're reading their so many books. So now we are trying to understand what that's going to look like, and are we going to be able to use teachers to help us in that area? If you have to bring on these summer workers, how do you get them how do you get them recruited? How do you get them employed? How do you get them trained? So there are a lot of discussion around what that looks like, and there are some obstacles that we got to solve. The intent, though, is that in order to be become we call normal again, we do think the summertime is a good transition period. So we want to take advantage of the things we learn in the summer and some of the things that we've learned this past semester to implement the summer to make either these hybrid models work or these all-out virtual models work.
That's interesting, and I'm glad that you might have sold my last question. I mean, you got into this a little bit. I know folks are really figuring out what to do next, and it sounds like you have a lot of unanswered questions. My final question really was going to be, what are some of the unanswered questions that the state has? I don't know if there are additional ones that you're thinking of, and just maybe any final thoughts on how, what guidance you're using. It sounds like mostly federal guidance on what reopening looks like. So any final thoughts on unanswered questions and following guidelines to the reopening?
So I think, the one thing, and this is the power of the ecosystem, is you're trying to come up with solutions to problems, but there's some around you have already solved some of those problems. But one of the things we have to really think about is, as we are focusing on reopening, but what does it look like if there's a second outbreak in the middle of the summer? What does that even look like, right? And how do we address that? Because your needs during the semester, they become more limited in the summertime. So, most teachers, there's by contract, there's a certain number of hours of academic time. Well, that a lot of that comes to the end in the summer. So we're trying to make sure that we are prepared for, again, what does these virtual camps look like that's impactful? And if there's a second outbreak, how does that look? And here's another thing that we also are thinking about as well. So we have all our schools are sitting empty right now. If there's an opportunity to have a social distancing type camp, is it possible to use certain school buildings? And if that's the case, who makes that call and what happens with that? I do think at this point, because district leaders, community leaders have been working on it now, I think we are trying to prepare for every different scenario, but understand what the most powerful thing we have is being able to connect with others who are trying to solve some of the same problems and be able to connect with others who have come up with some solutions.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the time today, Reginald. I know that the community of practice also, too, looks forward to learning more about what your state is doing and applying it within their own context. Like you said, that is the power of the STEM Learning Ecosystems community of practice. So with that, we'll give you back the rest of your afternoon. We thank you so much for your time and hope that you stay safe and be well.
Thank you for all you're doing with TIES, and hats off to all those who's working to make sure that our students are safe and our students are learning. Thank you so much, Veronica.